Hey, what's up guys? Today we're going to be taking a look at the DJI Ronin S stacked up against the Zhiyun Crane 2. I've had a lot of you guys asking me which one should I buy, or if I already have a Crane 2, should I upgrade to the DJI Ronin S? So today I'm going to be doing a few tests. We're going to test out hardware, what I like, what I don't like about each of them, and then we're going to take them out in the field and do some real world comparisons to see which ones do better in which scenarios. So I've already got both of these set up with Canon 1DX Mark IIs, both with 16 to 35 millimeter lenses, and I'm not going to cover in this video how to set these up. I'll do those in other videos inside the course showing you my favorite settings and how to get these balanced really well. But let's now talk about the pros and cons to each of these. We're going to start with the DJI Ronin S. First of all, the first thing I noticed when I opened up the Ronin S is the build quality overall seems nicer to me. It just doesn't seem quite as cheap as the Crane 2, but as we'll talk about later, it does make it a little bit heavier. And the obvious thing that a lot of people are talking about is the visibility of the screen. This back motor is set lower, so it doesn't cover the screen like the Crane 2. There are a few times when I'm shooting with this where I notice it kind of getting in the way and you can't see the screen very well. So that's a great plus with the Ronin S, is having that set lower. Also, the grip is better. It's not a huge deal. Again, these are minute things, but this has kind of a nicer hand grip, whereas this is just a round cylinder. So a slight advantage to the Ronin S on the grip. Now with setup time, I would say that they were pretty much the same as far as getting the cameras balanced, except for with the Crane 2, you have to buy a longer plate right here to allow for a 1DX Mark II. Now that isn't a real big issue with smaller cameras, but for me specifically, it takes about 10 minutes to take this off and screw back in the bigger plate to then mount your 1DX Mark II. So initial setup is a lot faster with the 1DX Mark II on the Ronin S, but as far as setting it up day to day, they're pretty much the exact same thing here, guys. So neither of them are going to be faster setups. Pretty simple on either system. Also, another pro is the gimbal actually comes off of the handle right here, which allows for some easier traveling. You can break it down better, so putting it in a backpack on the go is going to be a little bit easier to travel with. But there you have the pros of the Ronin S. Let's now talk about the pros of the Crane 2. So the first big pro of the Crane 2 is that it is $100 cheaper than the Ronin S. And I actually have a link in the description that allows you to get an additional 10% off. So overall, you could get this guy for $160 less than the Ronin S. The Crane 2 is also a pound lighter than the Ronin S. Now these setups you see here are like 7 pounds and 8 pounds. So either way, it's a lot of weight to deal with. But if that 1 pound is a big difference for you, then you might want to consider the Crane 2. Another pro of the Crane 2 is battery life. It is advertised to get 18 hours of battery life, whereas the Ronin S is said to get 12 hours. So slight advantage to the Crane, gives you a little bit more battery life. Now this one's a little bit silly, but another pro is the positioning of the focus wheel here. On the Crane 2, it's in a position where I can grip and do the focus wheel at the same time, versus the Ronin S is in kind of an awkward spot where you can't really do it with one hand. You can't really reach that in a position that's comfortable. You have to kind of use a separate hand just for the focus wheel, which means you can't use that other hand to help support. So I'm not sure why they stuck it clear up here. And speaking of the focus wheel, currently only the Crane 2 is compatible, specifically with my 1DX Mark II, to be able to pull focus from the wheel, whereas the Ronin S hasn't yet come out with that capability. It will in the future. They said later this year they should be able to link it up with a lot of cameras. Now, one thing I will say about focusing using this focus wheel, you see here that I have it plugged into the Crane 2 right now so that I can control focus. I personally don't think this is a super professional, useful way to pull focus. If you listen closely to the motors while I'm pulling focus, you can hear that it's kind of going in steps as it's pulling the focus instead of one continuous focus pull. And so that's going to give you a less professional focus pull than it would if you had a unit attached to the lens itself pulling the actual barrel of the lens. So I personally just use the autofocus within the 1DX Mark II, the dual pixel autofocus. If you don't have a good in-camera autofocus, then I'd recommend getting one of the units that allows you to actually pull the barrel of the lens. Another pro of the Crane 2 is that it has more accessories available. That is because it's been out for a while, whereas this is brand new. I'm sure this will come with more accessories in the future. The way they built this thing with the gimbal being able to come off the handle, I'm sure they're going to build a ton of accessories that can come with this. So I wouldn't make that a deal breaker, but as of right now, the Crane 2 has a lot more accessories to work with. Also, another small thing is that the Crane 2 has a little LCD screen that allows you to change camera settings and other settings, whereas the Ronin S just has a joystick and a couple of buttons. Now this comes down to personal preference, but I personally wouldn't ever use the Crane 2 handle to do all my camera settings, I would just touch the buttons on my camera itself. But some people might like that better, so that's just something to be aware of, that it has a screen and some more functionalities on the control itself. So that's it for the pros of the Crane 2, reasons why I would choose Crane 2 over the Ronin S. Now I want to talk about some of the differences and similarities, not necessarily pros and cons, but things that are just different or the same. You see right here, the Ronin S has a trigger on the front that gives you a few different function abilities that the Crane doesn't. One specific function is in order to get a lock mode, you have to hold down the trigger on the front. If you tap it twice, it goes back to its original point. So again, just something different with that trigger, different functionalities. Another difference is the way you charge the batteries. With the Ronin S, you just plug it directly into the gimbal itself, like so. Whereas with the Crane 2, you have to unscrew the handle, pop out the batteries, and then plug those batteries individually into its own charger. Some people prefer the ability to buy a bunch of batteries so that you can pop these in and out. I personally like the idea of just being able to plug it into the machine itself and not having to unscrew it and keep track of a bunch of batteries and a charger. But this way makes it a little bit harder to be able to have multiple batteries in case you need to shoot more than 12 hours. But again, I personally wouldn't ever shoot more than that and would just charge it overnight. Some other things to consider is that they both take external monitors. So if you want a bigger screen than your camera provides, you can attach external monitors to both. I personally don't like adding on more weight if I don't have to. And they both have the capacity to hold about the same amount of weight. The Ronin S can hold a little bit more at about 8 pounds, and the Crane 2 can hold up to about 7 pounds. So there you have a look at some of the pros and cons between these two units, just some differences in there to be aware of. But now the most important thing is which one performs better, which one's gonna give you a smoother, better shot, easier to use. So we're now gonna take you out in the field and show you a bunch of different scenarios and see which one actually shoots better. Check it out. All right, so our first field test is going to be where I think motorized gimbals shine the most, and that is real estate type shots where we're just doing one solid movement pushing straight in. So with the Ronin S, to get to lock mode so it's perfectly straight, you get your frame the way you like it, and then you hold down the trigger. And action. Very nice. All right, next we got the Crane 2. We are already in lock mode. Now we just have to aim it the way we want. Action. So for the real estate shot, I feel like they both did a great job. However, for whatever reason, I feel like the lock setting on the Crane 2 just keeps that frame nice and tight a little bit better, whereas as I sped up the footage in post, I could see the Ronin S moving back and forth just a little bit. So within the lock mode specifically, I think the Crane 2 wins on this one. All right, our next test is going to be full speed running. Let's see if there's any jitteries back and forth. First up is gonna be the Ronin S. Action. All right, now it's time for the Crane 2 testing out full speed running. Action. All right, so I thought that the DJI Ronin S did a better job at turning while running fast. We're gonna just do lock mode now and just have it go straight forward only, running full speed, and see which one does better. All right, trigger down, locked, and action. Record. Faster. It's hard to tell without reviewing the footage, but it looks like the Ronin S did better in both scenarios. The gimbals just seem stronger. I feel like they can manage a big camera like this better, and especially for running where there's a lot of force going on it to keep that camera steady. So our next test is going to be low mode. So to go into low mode in the Ronin S, you hold down the trigger to lock it and then sling it upside down, and you should be good to go. Action. Side view action. All right, now it's time for the Crane 2 low mode. Let's see how we get it upside down. Flip it upside down, pretty much the same thing. Action. Going directly behind. Now let's make a pan motion over, come up front. Now we'll go side view. Very nice. They both did pretty well, but I think I could see a little bit more of these juddery movements in the Crane 2, so I would have to give that one to DJI Ronin S. All right, our next test is going to be following a subject. We're gonna be kind of moving all around him, trying to keep him in the center of our frame. So we'll see how well this does panning without any quick jittery movements. All right, so Crane 2 did a good job as well following a subject. I thought Ronin was a little bit easier, a little bit smoother. You have more flexibility in the settings to kind of customize it the way you want, but overall they both did an awesome job. I think this was probably too close to tell, maybe a slight advantage Ronin S. All right, our next test is going to be my favorite move, the Parallax, which means I have a subject in the middle. We're gonna try and keep him in the same spot. He's stationary, and I'm gonna move all around him while panning the opposite direction, giving us a parallax effect. So we'll see how well this does panning while we're moving, keeping our subject right there in the middle. Action. All right, I'm gonna name a clear winner on that. DJI Ronin S is better at the parallax, keeping it nice and smooth. Ronin S for the win. All right, next test is going to be pushing in and pulling out in lock mode to try and lock in on a specific subject or subject's face and try and keep it super smooth, being able to do a time remap in post, coming in and out. So it'll look like the Crane 2 actually was better in lock mode, keeping it perfectly straight coming in and out. The winner on that one was Crane 2. All right, our next test is going to be the 360 barrel roll. Now the clear winner here is already the DJI Ronin S because the Crane 2 can't do this. It limits you to 45-degree movements. So we'll show you what it looks like with the Ronin S and as far as you can go with the Crane 2. So you have the 360 barrel roll, pretty cool. I don't see a ton of times you'd use it. It's kind of a novelty thing, so I wouldn't make that a deal breaker if you're choosing between the two, but it is a cool little feature it has. All right, next test is going to be hanging out of a window to test out its ability to withstand wind resistance. All right, time for the Crane 2 wind resistance test. Here we go. All right, so with the wind resistance test, they both did a great job of resisting the wind. With the Crane 2, I did have some issues with it hitting here a little bit. So slight advantage to the Ronin as far as ease of use in that situation, but as far as the motors go, they both did a good job on that one. All right, our next test is going to be the sports mode. Apparently this guy does a really good job by just holding down M of going from kind of lagging in its response, which is great for most things. When you hold down M, it's a lot more responsive. So we're gonna test this puppy out, see how it does. Sports mode, action. Action. All right, now time for the Crane 2 sports mode. This was one of my biggest gripes with the Crane 2 and most motorized gimbals is they don't go as fast as you'd like them to. So it's already clear to me which one's gonna win, but we're gonna do it anyway so you can see what it looks like. Here we go, Crane 2 sports mode, and action. The Ronin S held up a little bit better in a lot of situations and a lot better in other situations like what you just saw. Really a lot more agile to be able to quickly with that M button get a fast moving pan, whereas this one was lagging a lot. As you could see, it was having a hard time keeping up with me and then going too far and then not far enough. And so really cool sports mode. I was actually pleasantly surprised with the performance of that sports mode, and I would really actually say that I could see myself using that in situations where I would think normally only the glide cam would be able to work. So I'm giving this guy some real consideration as far as usability and the type of work that I do. But there you have the field test. We'll wrap it up now with my final thoughts. All right, so hopefully those tests were helpful for you to see which of these does better in which situations and which one would do better for the situations you shoot in. I would have to say, after using both of them, that I do overall think that the Ronin S is a better, smoother, more useful tool and is going to give you a higher quality look to your videos. The Crane 2 is a great tool as well, but as you can see in some of these tests, the Ronin S just has a little bit stronger motors with better algorithms and more flexibility in allowing you to fine-tune the settings to give you the exact look you want in the certain situations that you want them. So if I were to buy one of these two today without owning either of them, I personally would get the Ronin S. Either way though, guys, I think you're gonna get great results with either. It just comes down to learning how to use the tool, taking time to practice with it. There's links in the description to buy either of these right now. And I also want to throw in that though these are both great tools, I recommend to everybody to also learn how to get good at the glide cam. I know a lot of people are avoiding using that guy because it is harder. There's a bigger learning curve and it doesn't get as smooth of shots. Well, the truth is, guys, is that these tools aren't as versatile as something like a glide cam. They're going to give you a little bit more robotic of a look compared to a glide cam, and there's situations where you don't want that. And so I recommend to people to get good at using all kinds of tools: sliders, monopods, 3-axis gimbals, glide cams. Learn how to use as many tools as you can. You're going to be a better filmmaker for it than just limiting yourself to knowing how to use one tool. I personally love the glide cam for its versatility, but as this technology gets better, as you can see, I think this is an upgrade from the Crane 2, especially that sports mode that really allows you to get more of a handheld look, which is something I would say you normally couldn't get with a motorized gimbal. So they are making vast improvements, and hopefully one day they have one of these tools that feels like a natural extension, like I say, of your arm, like the glide cam feels. This isn't quite there, not a tool that I would pick over the glide cam in most situations, but they are getting close, they are getting a lot better, and this is starting to seem like a lot more useful tool to me than it has in the past. So there you have it, guys. There's my comparison of the Ronin S versus the Crane 2. If you'd like to see more awesome comparisons like this, you can join our full community at fulltimefilmmaker.com, where I teach you all about how to make money making videos and do what you love for a living. Well, that's it, guys. If you have any further questions for me, please let me know.